Welcome to Spooken Softly, where darkness breathes and shadows whisper. I'm your host, and tonight we venture somewhere you may not return from unchanged. Find a quiet place, turn down the lights, and let the story find you. Tonight's episode, The Station Mirror. The grease beneath my fingernails never really goes away. No matter how hard I scrub with that orange-scented industrial soap in the locker room, the black grime of the transit tunnels remains embedded in the creases of my palms, like a map of veins I was never meant to inherit. My father died with those same black lines on his hands, coughing up iron filings in a damp basement apartment while the city rattled above his ceiling. I swore I would never work the third rail. I swore I would keep my skies wide and my lungs clear. But life has a way of narrowing down your choices until the only path left is the one straight down into the dirt. Every night when I pull on my heavy canvas work jacket, I touch the small, laminated photograph tucked inside my breast pocket. It is a picture of my 8-year-old daughter, Lily. In the photo, she is sitting in a yellow plastic chair at the pediatric clinic, her legs braced in heavy steel and leather. She is smiling, but her eyes are bright with that quiet, exhausted bravery that no child should ever have to learn. The physical therapy costs more than my monthly rent, and the specialized nerve stimulation sessions are not covered by the transit union's basic insurance. So, I take the midnight shifts. I take the double-time hazardous pay in the deep, unmapped tunnels where the air tastes like rust and old batteries. I work in the dark because Lily needs to walk in the light. It was 3 a.m. when Greg, my supervisor, called me over the radio. His voice was a rasp of static and gravel, worn down by 40 years of breathing diesel fumes and coal dust.
Elena, you copy? I need you down in the lower tier of Sector 4. The construction crews breached a brick wall behind the old spur line near Whitehall. They found a disused platform from the 1920s that isn't on the current schematics. We've got an active high-voltage line running through there that's showing a massive ground fault. Go find the junction box and isolate it before the morning rush.
I wiped my sweaty forehead with the back of my sleeve and adjusted my tool belt, the heavy wrenches and voltage meters clanking against my thighs.
Copy that, Greg. I'm on my way down. Is there a water hazard down there? The blueprints for Sector 4 show some old creek beds.
Just some seepage, but watch your step. That masonry hasn't seen the sun in 100 years. It's slippery and the air is sour. Don't linger, just fix the ground and get back to the station.
I descended the rusted metal stairs into the deeper throat of the city. The air grew rapidly colder, carrying the wet, mineral stink of subterranean rivers. The modern concrete walls of the active subway line gave way to ancient, soot-blackened brickwork, held together by crumbling lime mortar. My headlamp cut a frail beam through the hanging mist, illuminating old iron pillars eaten away by orange blooms of rust. The silence here was different. It wasn't the absence of sound, but rather a heavy, pressurized waiting. Every drop of water hitting the ballast sounded like a wet finger tapping on my skull. Far above, the faint, low rumble of a late-night freight train vibrated through the bedrock, making the dust dance in the beam of my light. I stepped through the ragged gap in the brickwork that the construction crew had knocked open. The air on the other side of the breach was completely still. It felt heavy, almost pressurized, like the atmosphere inside a sealed tomb. My light swept over a forgotten platform. The tiles on the floor were small, hexagonal pieces of white and green ceramic, laid out in intricate geometric patterns that were popular a century ago. Unlike the rest of the tunnels, which were choked with grease and gray dust, this platform was strangely clean. There was no trash, no discarded steel cables, no nests of shredded newspaper. And then, my light caught the glass. It was mounted on the tiled wall between two crumbling plaster arches. It was a massive arched mirror, easily 6 feet tall, framed in heavy, dark mahogany that had been carved into intricate patterns of clinging ivy and weeping faces. It looked completely out of place in the damp, industrial belly of the city. More than that, it was immaculate. There wasn't a single crack across its surface. There was no silver rot peeling away at its edges, no yellowing film of age. It gleamed in the beam of my headlamp like a pool of black water frozen in time. I walked toward it, drawn by the sheer impossibility of its preservation. I reached out a gloved hand and wiped a thin layer of condensation from the glass. The surface was cold, colder than the surrounding brickwork, colder than the damp air that whistled through the masonry. I pulled my glove off, wanting to feel the smooth, heavy chill against my bare fingers. I looked into my own reflection. My face was pale, my eyes shadowed by exhaustion, my hair damp and wild from the humidity of the tunnels. But as I stared, the reflection did not seem to follow the movement of my hand. I blinked. The glass seemed to ripple, a slow, greasy shudder passing across my image like oil on water. The background behind my reflection began to change. The dark brick wall of the forgotten platform receded, melting into a warm, golden haze. The cold, wet smell of the tunnel was suddenly replaced by the faint, impossible scent of fresh pine needles and laundry detergent drying in the sun. I pressed my palm flat against the glass, my heart hammering against my ribs. The reflection in the mirror was no longer of the tunnel. It was a sunlit living room. I saw a plush, cream-colored rug, a white wooden rocking chair, and a low table covered in wooden building blocks. And there, sitting on the rug, was Lily. But it wasn't the Lily who slept in the cramped, damp apartment with a radiator that hissed like a dying animal. This Lily didn't have steel braces on her legs. She was wearing a simple cotton sundress, her bare knees smooth and unblemished. She was laughing, her small hands building a tower of blocks, then knocking them down with a delighted shriek that I couldn't hear, but could see clearly in the perfect, silent movement of her lips. I gasped, my breath fogging the glass. I quickly wiped the moisture away with my bare palm, desperate to keep the image clear.
Lily? Oh God, Lily.
The girl in the mirror stopped playing. She turned her head. Her bright blue eyes looked directly into mine. There was no confusion in her face, only a deep, serene recognition. She rose to her feet with a smooth, effortless grace that made my chest ache with a physical, crushing pain. She walked toward the glass, her small, bare feet sinking into the thick carpet, until she was standing right on the other side of the mirror, looking up at me. She reached out her hand and pressed her small palm against mine, separated only by the thin, cold sheet of glass. And then a voice drifted into my head, not through my ears, but as a soft, warm vibration inside my skull, sounding exactly like my daughter's sweet, lisping voice.
Mama, you found me. It's so warm in here. My legs don't hurt at all. Look how high I can jump.
I pressed my forehead against the glass, my eyes hot with unshed tears. I didn't care about the logic of it. I didn't care about the sanity of it. All I saw was my child, whole and happy and free of pain.
How? How is this possible, sweetie? What is this place?
The reflection of my daughter smiled, a warm, beautiful expression that filled my cold, hollow chest with a dangerous, intoxicating hope.
It's our home, Mama. But the air is so heavy. There are so many bad sounds coming from your side. The big wires, they make a loud noise that hurts my ears. They make the picture blurry. Can you make it quiet for me? Just a little bit?
I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of exhaustion that felt like wet wool in my brain.
The wires? The high voltage lines? I can't just turn them off, Lily. They power the transit grid. The whole sector will go dark.
The image of the room behind her flickered, a sudden spasm of gray shadow cutting across the sunny carpet like a knife. Lily winced, clutching her ears as if in sudden, sharp pain.
Please, Mama, it hurts. Just the little box with the red switch on the wall behind you. If you just pull the copper fuse, the noise goes away, just for a little while, so I can stay with you.
I turned around slowly. The heavy cast iron junction box of the sector's main feeder line was mounted on the brick wall just 10 feet away. The thick, rubber-insulated cables crawled out of it like fat black snakes. If I pulled the main fuse, the ground fault would disappear, but the safety relays for the third rail in Sector 4 would be completely disabled. It was a massive safety violation. People could get hurt. The trains could lose power in the dark. I turned back to the glass. Lily was crying now. Silent, fat tears rolled down her cheeks, and she was pointing down at her legs. I watched in horror as a thin, dark line of shadow crawled up her ankles, stiffening her knees, turning her soft skin into something rigid and gray.
It's coming back, Mama. The cold is coming back. Please, help me.
The sight of her pain cut through my training, my common sense, my fear of the dark. I couldn't bear to see her hurt. I couldn't let that shadow touch her again. I grabbed my insulated pliers from my belt and marched over to the junction box. My hands were shaking so violently, I could barely fit the key into the heavy brass padlock. I forced it open, the old metal creaking in protest. Inside, the heavy copper contact blades gleamed under the layer of protective grease. I knew what I was doing. I knew the danger. But I reached in, gripped the primary handle of the safety bypass, and pulled. A bright blue spark hissed in the damp air, casting long, jumping shadows across the ancient platform. The deep hum of the high voltage lines that had vibrated through my teeth for hours suddenly died, replaced by a profound, dead silence. I ran back to the mirror. The golden light inside the glass blossomed, brighter and more vibrant than before. The dark shadows around Lily's legs vanished instantly. She smiled, spinning around in a joyful, clumsy circle on the plush rug.
Thank you, Mama. It's so quiet now. I can hear the birds outside. Can you smell the grass?
I pressed my face to the glass, inhaling deeply. Yes, I could smell it. The sharp, sweet scent of summer lawn, of warm soil, of things that grew under an open sky. It was so real. It was more real than the damp brick of Whitehall. It was more real than my own tired, aching bones.
I can smell it, Lily. I want to be there with you. I want to hold you.
Lily leaned closer to the glass, her face just inches from mine.
You will, Mama, soon. But we need to make the signal stronger. There is another box down the tunnel, the one with the yellow warning sign. If you disconnect the ground wire there, the whole wall will disappear, and I can come out. Or you can come in.
My radio suddenly squeaked, the sound harsh and grating in the silence of the dead platform.
Elena, what the hell did you just do? We've lost telemetry on the entire Whitehall spur. The safety breakers are tripped, but the line is still showing a massive phantom load. Get out of there. There's an unmapped backfeed coming from somewhere down your line. Elena, do you copy?
I looked down at the radio in my hand. It felt incredibly heavy, like a useless chunk of cold lead. Greg's voice sounded small, thin, and remarkably far away, like someone shouting from the bottom of a deep, dry well. I didn't answer. I reached down, clicked the power switch off, and dropped the radio into the dark water pool at my feet. I looked back into the mirror. My reflection was gone. There was only Lily, her face full of a quiet, beautiful anticipation. But as I stared at her, a strange, hollow sensation opened up in the center of my chest. I tried to picture Lily's face, the face of the child I had tucked into bed just 6 hours ago in our cramped apartment. I tried to remember the shape of her nose, the tiny birthmark just below her left ear, the way her hair curled when it was wet. I couldn't. When I tried to summon her image, my mind met a smooth, gray void, like a blank wall that had been painted over 100 times. The only Lily I could remember, the only Lily that existed in my mind, was the one standing in the sunlit room inside the glass. My own history, my own memories of her birth, of her first steps, of her cries of pain in the night, they were all fading, dissolving into the bright, clean light of the mirror. I reached up to touch my own face. My skin felt different. It felt dry, brittle, like old paper that had been left in the sun too long.
What are you doing to me?
Lily's smile didn't fade, but her eyes grew wider, more intense, reflecting the golden light of the room behind her with a glassy, unblinking stillness.
I'm just making room for you, Mama. You don't need those sad memories anymore. They're so heavy. They make you tired. Leave them on the dirty side. Come to the clean side.
I backed away from the mirror, my heart thumping against my ribs. My foot struck a loose piece of concrete and I stumbled, falling back against the damp brick wall. The touch of the wet, cold brick was a shock of reality. I looked at my hands. The black grease beneath my fingernails was gone. In fact, my hands looked incredibly pale, almost translucent, as if the blood beneath the skin had turned to water. I could see the outlines of my bones through the skin, white and sharp. I realized then, with a cold, absolute certainty, that the mirror wasn't showing me a vision of my daughter's future. It was feeding on my past. It was taking my memories, my identity, my very substance, and using them to build the beautiful lie inside the glass. And the more I gave it, the more of myself I surrendered, the more real the lie became. I had to destroy it. I had to smash the glass. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed my heavy, copper-headed sledgehammer from my tool loop. I raised it over my shoulder, my muscles screaming with a sudden, unnatural weakness. I stared at the mirror, aiming for the center of the carved mahogany arch. Lily didn't move. She didn't run away. She just stood there, looking at me through the glass with those wide, beautiful blue eyes. But her face began to stretch. Her jaw dropped lower than any human jaw should go, her mouth opening into a wide, dark, bottomless crescent of shadow.
Mama, if you break me, you break her. You'll never remember her name. You'll never remember the sound of her voice. You'll be alone down here in the dark, forever. Is that what you want?
I froze. The heavy hammer trembled in my hands. I tried to say her name. I tried to say, Lily, but the word wouldn't form in my throat. It felt like a handful of dry sand. I couldn't remember the letters. I couldn't remember the sound of it. The child in the physical therapy room. What was her name? What did she look like? I looked at the child in the glass. She was so beautiful. She was so healthy. Behind me, down the dark tunnel, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, squelching through the wet ballast. A flashlight beam flickered through the masonry gap, cutting a wild circle across the ceiling.
Helena, where are you? The whole grid is collapsing. There's a fire in the substation. Helena!
It was Greg. He was coming to find me. He would see the safety switch pulled. He would see the mirror. He would try to drag me away from it. He would take me back to the cold, to the debts, to the child whose face I could no longer remember. I looked back at the glass. Lily held out both of her hands. The sunlit room behind her seemed to vibrate with a warm, inviting hum. The air was so sweet. It smelled of home.
Come on, Mama. Just one more switch. The main ground line on the wall. Cut it. Cut it and the door will open. We can be together. No more pain. No more dark.
My hands moved on their own. I dropped the hammer. It hit the wet concrete with a dull, heavy thud. I walked over to the main grounding strap, a thick braided copper ribbon that bolted the entire station's electrical safety system directly into the bedrock. It was the only thing protecting this sector from a catastrophic high-voltage surge. I took my insulated cable cutters from my belt.
Helena, stop! What are you doing near that ground line? Drop the cutters. It's live. There's a feed coming from the northern sub...
Greg burst through the masonry gap, his flashlight beam hitting my face. But when he saw me, he stopped. His face went completely pale, his mouth dropping open in horror. He didn't see Elena, the transit electrician. He saw something else. I looked down at my body. I could see the brick wall behind me through my chest. My hands were almost completely invisible now, just faint, smoky outlines in the damp air. I wasn't there anymore. I was already on the other side.
I have to do it, Greg. She's waiting for me. She doesn't have her braces anymore.
Helena, there's nobody there. The mirror is empty. There's nothing in the glass. It's just a blank sheet of lead. Drop the cutters.
I didn't listen to him. I couldn't. His voice was just a nuisance, a grating noise that was ruining the beautiful, quiet summer day that was waiting for me. I placed the jaws of the heavy cutters over the braided copper strap. I looked at Lily. She smiled, her eyes wide, her mouth opening in a silent, beautiful song of welcome. I squeezed the handles. There was no spark this time. There was only a sudden, massive rush of cold wind that smelled of ozone and wet earth. The light in the tunnel died instantly, plunging everything into a thick, absolute blackness. Greg's flashlight flickered out, its battery drained in a split second by the immense phantom draw. But in the darkness, the mirror was brilliant. The golden light exploded outward, swallowing the brick walls, the tiled floor, the rusted iron pillars. I felt myself falling forward, not down onto the cold concrete, but forward into something soft, warm, and infinitely deep. The smell of wet soot was gone. The smell of copper and grease was gone. I felt a warm hand slide into mine. It was small, soft, and completely whole. Welcome home, Mama. They found my tool belt 3 days later, lying on the wet concrete of the abandoned Whitehall spur. My supervisor, Greg, took early retirement that same week. They say he refuses to go into the basement of his own home, that he keeps every room in his house lit by 3 separate lamps, even during the day. The transit authority sealed the brick wall behind the Whitehall platform with 4 feet of solid concrete. They wrote the sector off as an irrecoverable ground fault, a blind spot in the city's grid that could never be mapped or repaired. But sometimes, when the midnight trains rumble through the lower tiers of Sector 4, the lights in the passenger cars will flicker, just for a second. And if you look closely at your reflection in the darkened windows as the train speeds through the black tunnels, you might not see your own face looking back. You might see a sunlit room, a small girl spinning in a yellow dress, and a woman standing behind her, her face slowly dissolving into the bright, beautiful light of a sun that never sets. And so ends tonight's tale, The Station Mirror. Thank you for sitting with us in the dark. If the shadow spoke to you tonight, subscribe to Spooken Softly and stay close. There are more stories waiting, more voices in the walls, more things that go quiet just before you notice them. Until next time, sleep well, if you can.